Take your buttercream piping skills to the next level by learning how to pipe buttercream flowers. In this video, we'll be using only 2 piping tips to create 6 different beautiful buttercream flowers. If you're a beginner and ready to jump in, let's get started. Adding real flowers to a cake is a viable alternative to piping buttercream flowers, but there are some obstacles in doing this. If you're already working with buttercream, you'll only need piping tip number 104 and piping tip number 3 to create all of the buttercream flowers shown in this video. In order to turn the flowers while you're piping them, a flower nail will come in handy. These are available in metal and plastic. I'll be using both types in this video. Even more important, you'll need squares of parchment. You can purchase pre-cut parchment squares, but if you have a roll of parchment paper, simply cutting them into squares works just as well. Prepare the flower nail by piping a small amount of buttercream directly to the top, then place the parchment square onto the flower nail. The buttercream will help the parchment stick to the flower nail. If the parchment square is rolling in a certain direction, always make sure it's rolling down and not up when you place it onto the flower nail. Additionally, you'll want to make sure that your buttercream is a medium to stiff consistency. It should not be thin, loose, or runny. It should be thick so that the flowers are able to hold their shape. Our first flower is the daffodil. Using tip number 104, touch the wide end of the tip to the parchment square and position it over the center. Squeeze with even pressure and form a slight heart shape, bringing the tip back down to where it started to form a petal. Turn the flower nail with your fingers before starting the next petal. Continue forming petals around the flower nail. Next, we'll rotate the 104 tip so that it stands vertically, and we're going to pipe a ring around the center part of the flower. Next, using the number 3 tip, we'll pipe a squiggly line along the top edge of the ring that we've piped. And here is our finished daffodil. The next flower is the anemone. Starting with tip number 104 and touching the wide end of the tip to the parchment paper, squeeze with even pressure to form the petal. Do this by gently bringing the tip out toward the edge and then bringing it back toward the center and stopping completely. After piping the bottom row of petals, we'll pipe a second row of petals over the top, making them slightly shorter than the first row of petals. This gives the flower more dimension. Next, we'll use the number 3 tip to pipe a medium-sized dot in the very center of the flower. And finally, we'll use the number 3 tip to pipe some single dots around the center dot. And here is our completed anemone. Our next flower is the zinnia. Starting with tip number 104, with the wide end of the tip touching the parchment square, we're going to form the bottom row of continuous petals into a ring. Be sure to turn your flower nail with your fingers as you go around. We'll form a ring of petals, leaving an opening in the center. Starting out of the center opening, we're going to pipe a second ring of continuous petals. Next, we'll pipe a slightly smaller ring of continuous petals for our top. Again, this is going to give our flower a lot of dimension. Next, using tip number 3, we will pipe a small dot in the center, and finally pipe 4 dots equally spaced around the center dot. And here is our completed zinnia. Next, we will be piping a carnation. Using tip number 104, we're going to pipe a mound into the center of our flower nail. Next, we'll hold the tip number 104 completely vertical with the narrow end at the top and the wide end touching the bottom mound. Next, we'll pipe squiggles back and forth to form an inner ring of petals. Then we'll continue to do the same on the outside of that ring and again on the outside of that ring. We only use tip number 104 for this flower. And here is our completed carnation. Next, we'll be piping a pansy. Let's start with tip number 104 and pipe 2 yellow petals. Next, we'll pipe 2 more yellow petals directly on top of our previous petals. Next, using tip 104, we will pipe 3 purple petals on the opposite side. Finally, we'll take our tip number 3 on a bag with yellow icing and pipe a teardrop shape from the yellow petals onto the purple petals. And here is our completed pansy. Next, we'll be piping a rose. Using tip number 104, we'll form a mound of icing into the center of our flower nail. You'll want this mound to be twice as tall as our tip number 104 when it's placed vertically. First, we'll form the center of the rose by holding the tip vertically and spinning our flower nail. Next, we'll form 3 individual petals by holding the tip vertically and piping arches over the outside of the flower. This is our inner layer. Next, we'll repeat the process and pipe 5 individual petals on the outside of the flower. And finally, holding the tip number 104 with a slight angle facing away from our flower, we'll pipe the last row of petals, which should be about 7 to 8 individual petals. And here is our completed rose. After piping all of your beautiful flowers, you can remove the parchment paper with the flower on it from the flower nail and place it onto a cookie sheet or a cake board. Next, place the cake board or cookie sheet into the refrigerator for about 30 minutes. This will allow our buttercream flowers to harden slightly. Once removed from the refrigerator, it'll be easy for you to remove the flower from the parchment and finally place it onto your cake. If this video is helpful to you, please hit the like button and consider subscribing to my channel for more tutorials like this. Now here's how to prepare a decorating bag. First, drop the tip into the decorating bag, pressing it down to the very bottom. Next, open a pair of scissors, position the blade about 1/4 inch from the opening of the tip, and move the scissors over the bag to create a score mark. Next, push the tip backwards and away from the end, far enough to see the score mark on the bag. Then cut the bag straight across the score mark. Finally, push the tip to the open end of the bag and it should look like this. As a bonus, I'll show you how to prepare a decorating bag with a coupler and explain the purpose of this nifty tool. First, untwist the coupler ring from the coupler body. Place the coupler body down into the decorating bag and notice the threads of the coupler body. Next, create a score mark on the bag at the bottom edge of the coupler threads like this. Push the coupler back slightly and cut the bag straight across the score mark. Push the coupler body to the bottom of the bag. Place any piping tip on top, then position and twist the coupler ring down onto the coupler body through the bag to secure the tip. A coupler allows you to easily switch the piping tip on a decorating bag. This saves time from making a separate decorating bag and is one less thing to clean up at the end of the day. All of these tips, a coupler, and decorating bags are available in my piping tip set, linked in the description below. Piping icing isn't the only decoration you can add to a cake. Check out the video on the right where I show you how to safely add real flowers to a cake. If you enjoyed this video, hit the like button below. And as always, thanks for watching.